The New York Mets lost their first series of the season, and I'm a little bit confused. Weren't they supposed to have a good offense?
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Well, the Mets lost their first series of the season. If you told me on Thursday morning the Mets would go out there with Clay Holmes, Tyler McGill, and Griffin Canning, and they would hold the Astros to 6 runs across this series, I would have said, oh, did they sweep? Or at least I would have thought the Mets would have won this series. But despite the fact that the pitching was excellent for the New York Mets, it was just a little bit better for the Houston Astros, and this team somehow loses this series and only scores across the 3 games a measly, 4 runs? 5 runs? I should know that before I just come out here and say it. Let me confirm real quick. 1 run the first game, 1 run the second game, 5 runs, and 3 runs in the middle game. It was brutal offensively in this series, and that's the bottom line. Game 1, you ran into a really good starting pitcher in Framber Valdez, their ace, and he kept the Mets off the board through 7. No shame in that. The Mets rallied in the 8th and the 9th inning of that game, but they just weren't able to ultimately capitalize on the Astros bullpen. Game 2, Mets were fortunate that Brandon Nimmo did not get caught stealing, because the fact that Brendan Rodgers dropped that ball that would have been an out of second base, Nimmo gets to stay on second. Vientos has the RBI double. Jesse Winker drives in Vientos. That was really the only successful rally in this entire series. You had Juan Soto homer in that game after the 2-run rally. And then for game 3 here, the rubber match, I previewed this game. I said the Mets had to get those bats to wake up a little bit. They did not. Juan Soto doubled in the first inning, and that was the only hit the Mets had the entire game. The 1 run they scored was a manufactured run in the 6th inning as Jose Siri drew a walk. We finally saw him in there. It was good to watch Jose Siri get on the field, and you saw the type of player he can be, the lightning rod, the spark plug, because Jose Siri draws a walk. He steals second base. He then goes from second to third on a sac fly off the bat of Francisco Lindor, and that was a fly ball to center field, and it wasn't necessarily too deep. So that even wasn't the easiest, base to take there. For Siri, it was, but I'll tell you what, if it was Pete Alonso on second base, I don't know if he makes it to third. That's a tough one to go on. Both Jose Siri's speed, it wasn't. And then Juan Soto comes up and he gets a gift RBI because he hits a comebacker to Spencer Arrighetti, and Arrighetti looks back Siri, and you think, all right, man, that was a missed opportunity. But then as soon as Arrighetti turns to first, Siri, no hesitation, takes off. And if you hesitate at all on a play like that, you're going to get thrown out. If you have anything less than elite speed, you are going to get thrown out. We're not talking about Jose Siri, being aggressive, and Arrighetti is looking. Sometimes you'll see those plays where, the runner's off the bag a little bit and the pitcher looks him back, but they don't want to lose the out at first. So even though they look him back a little bit, the runner is still, even if they're leaning back to third, they're still off the bag. And then the third goes to first and they break and they're able to make it. Jose Siri ran 90 feet. I mean, he was pretty much on third base. So Arrighetti's thinking, all right, well, he's not going. And the fact that he was able to close that distance and beat that throw, super impressive. And at that point, it tied the game. So that was the lone moment in this game for the Mets offensively that you can go home and be excited about. But other than that, it was just brutal. And what we saw throughout this series, Juan Soto is still going to make some stuff happen. Now, that RBI that he got, again, was a gift from Jose Siri. But he did, in the first inning, again, hit a double off the wall. He drew a walk to lead off the 9th inning. Like, Juan Soto is going to get his. There's no doubt about that. There's no questions. And it is so exciting that we get to watch 4 to 5 at-bats every single game with one of the best hitters in baseball. It does change everything, and it's one series. The rest of this lineup is going to get going. I know Francisco Lindor with the slow start has everyone concerned. At some point, he's going to get his legs under him, and he's going to figure it out, and he's going to start to hit. Same thing with Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Vientos, and I think really for all three of those guys, today I didn't love the at-bats from Pete, but overall in the series, I thought his at-bats were good. Nimmo, I felt like had good at-bats throughout the series. Mark Vientos hit the ball hard, particularly in the ninth inning. Juan Soto is on second base at that point. He advanced on a ground out off the bat of, Nimmo, I think, had the ground out because Pete Alonso popped up. After Soto drew that leadoff walk in the ninth, Pete pops up. Brandon Nimmo rolls one over, but it does move the runner into scoring position. And Vientos ripped one off of Josh Hader, 108 miles per hour off the bat. It just was right into the shortstop's glove, Jeremy Pena, and that was the end of the ball game. So I think, again, Vientos, Nimmo, Alonso, they're all having good at-bats. And I don't think Lindor is completely lost up there. He got under a couple in this series that, I think last year when he got comfortable, those were the types of pitches and swing decisions where you would have seen Francisco Lindor home runs. And yeah, it might just be a situation where he's going to still be a little bit of a slow starter, but I'm not going to panic after 3 games for anything about this lineup. I will say, again, there was missed opportunities. I think the Mets were not nearly aggressive enough as they should have been against Spencer Arrighetti, particularly early in counts at times where they were getting pitches they could have handled. And maybe they're a little bit too passive. And he just kind of dominated. Once he got himself in pitchers' counts, he was putting guys away. He was inducing the soft contact. There just wasn't a lot of opportunities for the Mets. I mean, they went down in order. After that first inning where Soto had that double, the next 4 innings, they go down in order. 6th inning, Siri has the leadoff walk, manufactures the run. 7th inning, they go down in order. 8th inning, you had a wasted opportunity as Luis Torrens drew a leadoff walk. Luis Angel Acuna comes on, steals second base. Brett Beatty, golden opportunity, and he strikes out. And that was a really frustrating one because I really was hoping that Beatty was going to come through. And, you start to read into things a little bit too much. You start to read into body language with a guy like Beatty because you get to a point where the struggles at the big league level are going to continue to get magnified. And 2 games into the season, everything you did in spring training washes away. Now, people are going to say, well, yeah, we've seen that before. Brett Beatty has never had a spring training as good as the one he just had. So I am not going to completely give up on Beatty after 2 games. But when he strikes out like that, you start to think, is it in his head? Is this the guy that just can't get it done at the big league level? Those thoughts are natural. So hopefully we see this lineup really start to come together in Miami. I'm going to preview that series on tomorrow's show because there's no game on Sunday. But this is a Mets team now that has a guy that's going to make stuff happen in Juan Soto. It just seems like everyone else at this point through one series is maybe pressing to try to support this new awesome superstar teammate they have. And I think at some point they'll all settle in and we'll see this lineup start to roll. But it was an extremely frustrating series to watch, as if the Mets had just gotten a little bit of offense. They could have swept this series against a really good team because their pitching was that good. And I think that's the thing that you should feel a little bit better about. The bigger takeaway they should have from this series is the Mets went into Houston against a team that has won that division every single year outside of 2020 for I think the last 7 or 8 seasons. They always win that division over full 162. It's one of the best teams in baseball. And you went in there with a converted reliever making his first start in years. And then your back-end starters, because the Mets have their rotation pretty much set up inverse, where David Peterson and Kodai Senga, who are probably your best 2 starting pitchers right now to open up the season, they didn't throw in this series, and you had a chance to win every single game, and your bullpen was great. I want to talk about Canning's performance a little bit in just a minute. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before, because right now new customers Get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories to who's cutting down the nets. And with tournament games happening, there's always something exciting to bet on. Not to mention, we got the baseball season going. So you got baseball action you can look at, whether you want to look ahead to the futures that are still available, between MVP odds, Cy Young odds, all that stuff, or game to game with the New York Mets. If you want to place a little action, you can do so. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 13,000 subscribers. If you're liking what you're watching, hit the like button and leave a comment on today's video. Air out some frustration. What was the thing that made you the most mad about the Mets losing this series? I'd love to see what you all have to say about that. One thing that shouldn't have frustrated you, though, was the performance of Griffin Canning. I thought it was great, honestly. I think he had the best start in this series. Granted, he gives up a couple of runs. He gets the loss. But I thought overall, we really saw Griffin Canning in command of this Astros lineup. He did give up a home run to Jeremy Pena on a slider that didn't get down enough, but it was a good piece of hitting from Pena. And, like Canning said after the game, Pena hadn't been seeing his slider well up to that point. So it wasn't even like a completely blown location. It's not like it was a slider that was put on a tee. It was just a good piece of hitting for Jeremy Pena that was probably looking for slider and got one with enough plate that he was able to hit it out to the Crawford boxes and left. But overall, I mean, Canning did a really nice job. He almost retired the lineup in order the first time through. Did give up a leadoff single. I want to talk about that single the next segment because Mark Vientos' defense in this game was unbelievable. He almost made a circus play against Jose Altuve to start things off. Instead, Altuve gets erased on a strike him out, throw him out double play, and then he got Yordan to fly out in that first. 1-2-3 second inning. Third inning with 2 outs. He walks the 9-hole batter, so that extends the inning to turn the lineup over, but he got the leadoff guy out. He got Altuve out there. Fourth inning, leadoff walk, strikes out Yordan, and then gets a really nice double play turned. Again, Vientos' defense. We'll talk about it in the next segment, but Vientos debated to Alonso. Fifth inning, Canning gives up that home run to Pena, but then settles in to get the next 3 guys out. Sixth inning, gives up a base hit with 1 out. Then he got another ground ball that just wasn't hit hard enough for Vientos and Beatty to turn 2, which brought Yordan Alvarez up with 2 outs and a runner on. I was very surprised that Carlos Mendoza did not have Danny Young ready, or just even if it was going to be Jose Budo, Max Kranick, whoever it is. I was surprised that they let Canning face Yordan in that spot. For those of you who listened to my show yesterday, I did talk about some of the guys that had success against Griffin Canning in the past, and Yordan has pretty much, taken his lunch money across their history together. He was 7 for 13 against Canning going into this game. I believe it was 3 home runs, if I'm not mistaken, and 3 walks. I know the OPS was just over 1,700, which is absurd. So you have a guy that pretty much always does damage against your starting pitcher, who is, past at that point, 85 pitches around there, and you don't have someone ready to take that at bat. To me, that would have been the stop line for Griffin Canning. I would not have let Canning face off against Yordan, but it does tell me a little bit of something about how Carlos Mendoza trusts Canning over a Tyler McGill right now, because McGill was throwing the ball well in his start. And granted, maybe it's different because the Mets had a lead, but I mean, this was at that point, it was a tie ball game. So I don't even know if that would be much of a difference. But when there was 2 runners on and you got to, was it Yordan when they made the move? I think it might have been. He did not let Tyler McGill at 77 pitches face Yordan, but here Canning, couple outs. Maybe that was it. Maybe it's because there was already 2 outs and he's hoping that he gets out of that inning. But to me, when you had Budo and Kranick sort of set to pitch bulk relief and you already got 5+ out of Canning, that was the one mistake of this game. Actually, another one, because I didn't like him throwing Budo out there for a third inning as well. But look, this is always a thing, and I always try to put myself back into my mindset when I first started hosting this show in 2019, where every single game I was playing the let's nitpick Mickey Callaway's bullpen management. And in the wins, you say, oh, he was brilliant. In the losses, oh, he made all these stupid mistakes. I always say that fans are always quick to judge the manager because we could never do what the players do. None of us could imagine ourselves going up against Jordan Alvarez and striking him out or getting him out in that spot. But we can imagine making the decision to not have the guy that got burned by Jordan Alvarez and has somebody else pitch in that spot. So it's always just natural for a fan to judge the manager before the player. At the same time, I do think that was a mistake. Regardless, overall, you look at 5 2/3 for Griffin Canning, where he allowed 4 hits, 2 walks, 2 runs. If he doesn't face Jordan, it could have been 3 hits, 1 run. Really good performance. He touched 96. You don't expect to see that from Canning. And he threw the slider a ton, as I mentioned. Last year, he threw a slider 24% of the time. The most he's ever thrown a slider over the course of a season was in 2023, where he threw it about 30% of the time. I'd be curious this year if his usage beats that. 2023 was also his best season. But today, of 87 pitches, 47 of them were sliders. He threw his slider 54% of the time. Now, I don't know if that's going to be something that continues. I sort of doubt that it is. But I think you are going to see by the end of this season, the slider and the fastball, I imagine they're close in usage, and I wouldn't be surprised if that slider is a little bit ahead. This isn't a guy that throws his fastball 50% of the time anyway. He is a 3-pitch pitcher for the most part. There is, I think, a cutter that he's toying with. I'm not sure if they're playing with a sinker with him or not. I think there is 5 pitches overall, but if you really look at the usage last year and throughout his career, it's fastball, slider, changeup. I think we're going to see more sliders this year. I would not be surprised at all if that slider usage got up above 35%, and the fastball might be like at 33. Where it's just a little bit more slider. It's clearly his best pitch, I feel, and I guess in this matchup in particular, where you had pretty much nothing but right-handed batters, it was a good one to really lean into that slider, and that's why we saw him throw it a ton. Now, Jose Budo, like I mentioned, he comes on in that 6th inning after the Jordan double. He strikes out Christian Walker to strand Jordan to get out of that inning. And then in the 7th, he looked great, 1-2-3 frame. I don't know why Mendoza threw him back out there for the 8th when you had Max Kranick, who you could have had come up in a soft spot against the bottom of that order for the Astros. Maybe he mows through them, and that might have been it for Max Kranick probably would have been because the Mets weren't going to score anyway. But instead, he has Budo go back out there. I don't know if they're trying to keep Budo sort of stretched out to a certain point, and that's how he plans to continue to use him. Again, I'm just doing the nitpick game, but I would have liked to see Kranick get a clean inning. Instead, though, we saw Kranick have to come in with the bases loaded and 1 out, and he got out of it. So it ends up being a tough spot to put Kranick in, but yeah, you haven't pitched in the big leagues since 2022. And all right, go ahead. Face one of the top 5 hitters in baseball, and Jordan Alvarez with the bases juiced. Have fun. And he got a pop-up, and then he got a ground out of Christian Walker. So impressive stuff by Kranick overall in this series. The pitching was great. I think Clay Holmes looked the worst, and that was the first arm that we saw. Other than that, it was really solid pitching across the board. McGill looked good in game 2. The bullpen was really solid in that one. And this one, Budo obviously lost it a bit in that third, what was in the 3rd full inning, but, it was his 3rd time up. So overall, I thought that was the highlight of this series was how well the Mets pitched. Also, how they played defense is what we're going to talk about to close out the show. Mark Vientos just had, I think, the best defensive game of his career. I want to highlight that in just a minute. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. If you want to be Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. go to Centex.com/LockedOnMets. It might be time to change the scouting report on Mark Vientos. The bat first third baseman, or the bat only third baseman, as he has been described in the past. He's got a glove on him, and more importantly, he's got a cannon of an arm. Unbelievable game for him defensively. The best game I've ever seen Mark Vientos play at third base. He was awesome. From play one, literally, as Jose Altuve hits a rocket down the third base line, Vientos, one motion, dives, a great stop just to get to that ball. And then from one knee, with his back completely turned to first base, knowing that Altuve is going to be booking it down the line, he somehow from one knee gets a throw over on a fly. He did, go a little bit too high with that throw. It didn't quite beat Altuve anyway. But if that was any different runner, if that was Christian Walker, he would have had more time to gather, and he still could have thrown from his knees. But the throw from his knees, from an odd angle where his body, his momentum is going away from first base, and he just, it was almost akin to like a hook shot. But just, to launch it like that, incredible play, even though he doesn't get the out. And then, you still had, a couple more fourth inning. He turns a double play on a ball that, again, was hit at him, real hard. Both the double play ball that he turned in the fourth and Jose Altuve's came off the bat at 98 miles per hour. Now, for the double play ball in the fourth, I believe it was Christian Walker that hit that. It's either Walker or Isaac Paredes, but regardless, that ball, he was positioned well, and it got on him in a hurry. It was pretty much a one-hopper when it got to him, but he picks it up cleanly. Strong, accurate throw to Brett Beatty, making an easy turn for a new second baseman. So really nice job there. You saw him again, on a ball that wasn't quite hit hard enough, but he started the double play well as far as his side of it, able to put a good throw to Beatty. But at that point, for that double play, they couldn't turn. It wasn't hit hard enough. Nothing either of them could have done. And then I think the play that really stood out to me, eighth inning, runners at first and third. Mets at that point are, down by one run. So you're really, every run is so valuable with the offense really sputtering. He gets a slow hit ball to him. And that's a play last year that Mark Vientos does not make. We saw him multiple times in the playoffs where the infield was in and he had to, make that play home, whether it was coming in on a ball or a ball hit hard at him, whatever it was. This time, I think it was more even with the bag, but regardless, Vientos fields that ball and no hesitation, no fear, comes up firing a home, delivers a strike, and it's an easy out at the plate. So that was a really impressive play to me because last year he was not good going home. He was at his best, throwing across the diamond to first. Even at times, his throws to second last year, if memory serves, weren't always accurate. He was extremely accurate with the arm in this game, and that's his biggest tool defensively, that cannon of an arm. But you're also seeing that quick reaction time as far as being able to make that diving stop, to be able to turn to. He doesn't have as much fear, I feel like. Not that he ever played with fear, but the uncertainty, right? He is getting more and more confident at third base, where if he can get to it, he's going to, for one, have the soft hands to field the ball cleanly. He's going to be decisive with his throws and accurate, which really is all you can ask for a guy that still is going to have the limited range, but he checks so many boxes with that arm, with now the soft hands, with the ability to make the plays that are hit to him. Yeah, there's going to be other third basemen like your Matt Chapmans who are converted shortstops, who are just more athletic, who are going to be quicker to the ball. They're going to be able to come in on balls, make the tough plays, go into the hole more and, play off the bag a little bit so they can cheat a little bit more and they can, maybe help their shortstop, but also still be able to guard the line with their speed and quickness. That's not going to be Vientos. And because of that, I don't know how the defensive metrics are going to grade him, but I really don't care. If he plays defense the way he did in this game, he is not just good enough, he is above average at the position. it's really impressive, and it does change the outlook on Mark Vientos a little bit, because I think we have to change our narrative of how we talk about him. Myself, first and foremost here, there's been times in recent podcasts where I've been talking about Brett Baty and his progression and what he did in spring training. And hey, if this translates, remember, Brett Baty is the better defensive third baseman. I still would probably right now, if you ask me, I got 100 plays. I'm going to throw both these guys in the situations. Who's going to make more plays? I'd still probably lean Brett Baty, because Brett Baty is going to have, the same, I don't know about the same arm. Vientos might have a little bit of a stronger arm, but Baty's got a good arm on him too. And Baty has the soft hands, and Baty also is going to have a little more range. He's a little bit quicker. So, yeah, I'd still say in a vacuum, I'd probably take Baty defensively over Vientos, but the margin is getting smaller and smaller. And the bottom line is you have a guy that is clearly a plus hitter who is able to play that position, and that is a tough position. Third base is a premium spot. And so I think when you're looking at the Mets and their long-term vision now, it's not, if Baty hits, he can still be your third baseman and Vientos can move over to first if Alonso walks, or Vientos can be your DH, which I've talked about again in recent episodes where I was sort of going through the thought process of, what if Baty does hit? And what if McNeil comes back and he's hitting? How do you structure it? Well, maybe there's some days where Baty's at third, Vientos is at DH, and McNeil's at second. You know what? If Baty's hit, maybe he's the DH, because I don't know if you take Vientos off of third base. I don't think there's any reason to. This guy has made incredible strides. And I think part of it was, finally, being told that you can, that they want you to learn third base, and that they believe you can do it. Because I think with the past regime at times it was, let's try him in left. Let's try him at first base. And we'll DH him. So there was never this idea that Vientos could be a good third baseman. Last year, when he goes back down after spring training, the whole entire goal was, you're going to play third base every day. You're going to learn that position so you can play it well at the big league level. And now we've seen, more than a year later, this guy was playing third base in the playoffs. I think he has all the confidence in the world now. And I think he's more engaged on that side, knowing how important it is for the team to win, that he is as good as he can be at the position. And all of a sudden, I think it's clicked for him. It's easy in the minor leagues to lose sight of the defense, to just think about your offense, because the bat's going to get you to the show. When you get up to the big leagues and now you're winning and losing at the highest level, I think a competitor like Vientos can start to really shine through at the position. And I don't think this guy's going to win a Gold Glove, but could he finish this season and actually come out with positive defensive metrics? Would not be surprised at all. And should he be the Mets third baseman for the next decade? Maybe. Sure. Give him the pre-arb extension. Let's stop messing around and roll with Vientos at third base. I don't care about Mauricio and Baty or Jesus Baez beyond them. To me, you got your third baseman of the future. If Pete Alonso walks, you got to fill first base. And it's not with Mark Vientos, because he's got a home at third. It's crazy for me to say this, but I feel like watching Vientos at third base is the best watch I've had. I'm gonna for a guy that's not known for his glove. What I mean by the best watch is I love watching him showcase that arm, and it's fun for me to just see the progression, because again, like last year, he still was not an above average defender, but I would tell you at the end of last season, he wasn't hurting the Mets defensively. We've watched since David Wright, as Drupal Cabrera and Jose Reyes played a little third base. I guess Neil Walker. Did Neil Walker play some third along with second? He might have. I'm trying to go through. I mean, Todd Frazier had a couple of years for sure, and Frazier would play a solid third base. But there's something about the homegrown prospect that wasn't known for his glove, and he just surprises you now. And it's so much better than J.D. Davis ever was. I hated watching J.D. Davis over at third. It's been a lot of fun to see what Vientos can do. And, in this game, to see him Make the diving stop. Incredible circus throw. Doesn't get the runner, but still an awesome play. Starting a couple potential double plays, one that they actually converted. He, started one the other day too. Seeing him, go into foul territory, reach over and be calm, cool, and collected and make that catch. It was just a flawless game defensively for Mark Vientos. And I can't wait to watch him continue to thrive at that position and completely get rid of that narrative that he is some type of liability at third, because he's not. He's turning into an asset. And that's such a huge thing for this franchise long term. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. The Syracuse Mets got rained out on Saturday, so Brandon Sproat's debut was delayed. We're going to see him start his season on Sunday now. So if you're jonesing for a baseball and you got MLB.TV, you can watch minor league games 1 o'clock. It's the start there. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to recap Brandon Sproat's first start of this season. And of course, I will preview what lies ahead. Mets versus Marlins. I'm going to be in Miami for a couple of the games of that series. So I'm really looking forward to it. And you will get that full series preview then. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. My Locked On Sports Today is streaming 24/7 on YouTube.